Hisone to Masotan is weird. I guess I should have expected as much from a show that's about cute girls getting bored by transforming dragons. But hey, while anime can be pretty out there, premise alone certainly isn't enough to determine much about a show regarding quality or even themes, narrative, and general character. What strikes me as particularly interesting and entertaining about Hisone to Masotan is just how goofy it can be while still playing its story for some genuine drama. For some, I imagine there are aspects of the show's bizarre development that might be a hindering factor, but I think there's plenty of interesting things that make it fairly worthwhile. The show certainly is ambitious, if anything. Not only does it establish this very unique premise, get across all the major rules and limitations of the system, and give at least some modicum of the history behind it, it also develops our 5 mains, well actually 6 with Maso-tan, and a pretty good portion of the supporting cast as well. On top of just the dynamics between the crew itself, it attempts to pull off a pretty intense and dramatic final stretch, all this with the grand total of 12 episodes. I almost enjoy the fact that it is trying to do so much, more than necessarily its skill at doing any one thing, though I was rather surprised at just how well it manages to balance all these elements, establishing a very memorable cast and developing them and their relationships accordingly, though some more than others, all alongside establishing the premise without feeling excessively expository. The actual narrative felt a bit unsure of what it wanted to be, yet again I can't help but find that amusing in itself. While these characters fly with lives on the line, I'm struck with a sense of care for them as individuals, but also can't help but laugh at just how silly it all seems with these goofy looking characters chilling in the stomach of these goofy looking dragons. And the show itself is acutely aware of this aspect. A key example is how Hisone interprets Maso-tan licking her as a display of affection, and so in turn returns this licking in an extremely comical fashion. More than a one-time gag, this turns into a running exchange, even at times breaking what had previously been a dramatic moment. And even in how silly and humorous it is, both conceptually and in expression, it works not only in just how amusing the whiplash of tone is, but in how it shows Hisone's care for Maso-tan in a perfect display of her eccentric personality. The expression of the narrative plays into this dramatically humorous atmosphere. Not to knock the other good stuff coming out nowadays, but it definitely is a nice breath of fresh air. Aesthetically, it's a pretty far jump from your average show, with the use of inconsistent line width, very flat coloring, black dot eyes, and the charmingly doofy characters. Everyone looks kind of off, but in a good way. It feels like there's personality and character to every frame, which is only furthered by the lively movement and eye-catching expressions that feel straight out of a Trigger show. Each character has their own way of expressing their feelings and moving through a scene, in a way that makes character dynamics and personality traits jarringly obvious without need for even a single line of dialogue. That said, the dialogue, particularly the delivery of the dialogue, surprised me by ending up being one of my favorite aspects of the show. The vocal performances from all the cast are unique, memorable, and an absolute joy to listen to. To be honest, most of the time I can barely tell one voice from the next, with some key exceptions, and oftentimes I find the characters that climb the rankings in my favorites list are those with especially appealing vocal performances, alongside just being great characters. Just like with the visuals, the voice work here doesn't shy away from being a bit broken, and in this case in a much more literal sense. I'd love to see a compilation of all of Hisone's adorably compelling voice cracks. This plays into the running theme. Sure, the voices are caricatured and a bit silly, but that establishes them as unique individuals. Maybe the vocals get pretty exaggerated, but it only sold me even more on the emotions the characters felt, be it dramatic or comical. I totally buy into Hisone's voice squeaking as she tries to give an emotional speech at the top of her voice. It's hilarious and at the same time more stirring than anything I could possibly imagine. Hisone to Masotan, even with its more dramatic developments later on, is a positive show to the extreme, which is part of why I enjoy Hisone so much as a character. Even with her crappy personality, as she would say, she strives to do the right thing and is the type to say that if the rules don't give us a solution where everyone wins, then let's break the rules and write our own. I'm no prude to the nihilistic side, but I also appreciate genuine, unbridled positivity and hope when it's done well. And I think it is done well through the lens of Hisone as our pivotal character, especially with how she is developed. Hisone to Masotan has its flaws to pick apart, and it very much so bears a lot of Mari Okada's staples. In some ways, I almost wish it pushed things farther, especially with the mostly unremarkable, but most definitely uneccentric OST. Some of the themes feel like they could have used much more exploration, and honestly, I just really wanted to see more of the setting and the characters than this short season allowed for. But as a whole, it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience, largely because of the cast and the presentation behind it. To take a second and just embrace the absurdity of the fact that this show exists and that Hisone is delightful and I love her. Coincidentally, that is also my full review of Hinamatsuri, except with Anzu. Also, the ED is just perfect. I could watch it on repeat till the end of time. You can't help but want to dance along with the cast of characters when it comes up at the end of each episode. The delightful tone and irresistible visuals. I couldn't imagine something more fitting for the show itself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, maybe hit that subscribe button and stick around for a while. I also recommend checking out my second channel, Horse Contemplations. I post more vloggy style content there, but currently I'm running 2 series, the first of which is Drop or Not, where I give my first impressions on seasonal anime and pick what I'm gonna drop and what I'm gonna finish based on the first episode. And then there's Anime in ... This is where I pick a year of anime and just try everything that aired in that year. Right now, the year I selected is 2010, and I've already come across some pretty cool stuff, so I hope you'll give that a look. If you just want to see what I'm watching and some very brief write-ups on stuff I finish or drop, my Annie list is core reviews as well. And finally, I highly recommend you check out my podcast that I run called Natsukashi. We talk about older anime with a bunch of cool Annie-tubers. The most recent episode was Angel's Egg, and the upcoming episode will be Cyber City Uedo 808, which will be a neat one for sure. But the Angel's Egg podcast had a lot of really interesting discussion, so I just think that it's an underrated podcast. I want to promo it. I want people to listen. I really enjoy doing it, so I'm hoping people enjoy listening to it. Finally, this will not really be relevant too far into the future, but my Why You Should Watch Heidi Girl of the Alps video has been taken down. I'm fighting this takedown, so I'm guessing when this goes up, the video should come back up in about a week. So just keep that in mind. I don't only talk about seasonal anime, guys. I do talk about other stuff, but they took down the video, so kind of sucks, but it'll be back. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble now, but thanks for watching again, and I'll see you all in the next video.